Welcome back to another Kentucky Derby profile here on Racing Rundown. Today we're going to be talking about Zandon, the winner of the Bluegrass Stakes. However, before we get too far into this, I just want to mention that there is a playlist down below in the description where you can check out our other Kentucky Derby profiles. We're going to have a profile for every single one of the starters in this year's Kentucky Derby. So if you haven't checked out some of the other ones, be sure to head down to that playlist and check out some of the other ones. We're going to get into now talking about Zandon's maiden race. And it was going 6 furlongs at Belmont Park on October 9th. And as you can see right there, he kind of missed the break a little bit. Wasn't a great start. I don't remember whether or not he hit the gate or not, but definitely didn't get a great start there. But he recovers nicely. Joel Rosario, who's aboard in this race, gets him in a good position right now at this point, inside of horses, and recovers from that difficult start. And that's something that we'll talk about a little bit more, potential gate issues that he has. But right now, you're going to start to see in a minute, Zandon's getting a little bit headstrong with here. He starts to throw his head for Rosario. I wonder if Rosario's starting to try to fight the horse at this point. He wants to go, and Rosario doesn't really have a place for him to go yet. And he's kind of stuck inside at this point, behind the two leaders and the four Chanso, who's actually a turf runner for Todd Pletcher. But right now at this point, Zandon doesn't really have a clear path through, and it looks like that he may leave a good impression but get beat. And the two leaders are kind of starting to pull away from them. But right at this point is when Zandon kicks it in right here, and he starts to pick up these leaders. And still at this point, looks like they may get there, but right now, Zandon, with that big, powerful move in mid-stretch, runs by them. This was a very good maiden breaking effort. I can't remember whether or not Zandon was a maiden watch horse. If you listen to Racing Rundown podcast, Eric does a segment every week called Maiden Watch, where we profile really good maiden winners. I can't remember whether or not he was a maiden watch horse, but I didn't remember this myself until watching it back, but that was a very, very strong maiden breaking effort. Now we're going to move on to Zandon's second career start. This is the Remsen Stakes at Aqueduct. So a big jump for him from going 6 furlongs against maidens to jumping right into stakes company, going 1.125 miles, which the Remsen Stakes is, it's kind of sink or float for horses that jump into the Remsen Stakes. Some of them really like the early distance. Some of them, it doesn't work out too well for them. But Zandon, as you can see right there, gets a better start than he did in his maiden race, and is able to establish some good position under Johnny V this time, who picks up the mount for this race. Inside of him is Mo Donegal, who we have a preview for him, and you might know from his success in the Wood Memorial and also in this race. But Zandon right now has a very good position right now. He's not too close to the lead. There's two horses in front of him, but he's not as far back as he will be in his subsequent races, which I don't think he needs to be that far back, Bluegrass or Risen Star far back, but definitely the less close to the pace he is, the better for him. But as I mentioned, just kind of sitting a really good trip right now. The leaders are putting up very slow fractions. So even if he is one of those horses that doesn't want to be this close normally, very friendly fractions for a horse like Zandon to have to contend with. And going his first time 9 furlongs, certainly positive signs right here. And at around this point is when Johnny V is going to start to make the move with him. And he's actually going to get first run on Mo Donegal. The four from Another Mother's, who's been leading the race, is beginning to tire at this point. And off the turn, Zandon's going to strike the front. But you see out there, Mo Donegal's widest of all. He's going to get into the race right now. But at this point, Zandon looks really good right until Mo Donegal runs at him. And at this point, it now looks like Mo Donegal is going to run by and win by a length or two. But then Zandon digs in, and we have a really good stretch battle between these two horses. And you might remember the controversy that came with this. Irad Ortiz actually hit Zandon with his left hand down the stretch in this race. There was an inquiry. I do believe that Zandon should have been put up in this spot, but I do think Mo Donegal was the better horse in the race. But we're not going to get into the politics of that disqualification. But a very good effort from Zandon in his first time against Stakes Company, and I'll get to it a little bit later, the really big positives for that. So now we're going to move on to his third career start, another 1.125 start, and this is the Risen Star Stakes, and this is probably the toughest group of horses that he's going to have to go up against on his Derby trail. And as you can see right there, the break is absolutely one of the reasons that does him in for this. He hops at the break. He's last at this point. So in his first two starts, he was more forwardly placed. This time he's going to be absolutely last at this point. And, not a death sentence for him, but certainly not something you want to see from him hop at the break there. And Epicenter, who is the winner of this race, and we did our Derby profile for him already, is just going to go out here. Epicenter, as I mentioned in his profile, kind of trips out in this race, sets some really friendly fractions, doesn't have a ton of horses up with him, and is able to go on and win by his own win for basically for fun in this race. Unfortunately, the tree lines are kind of obscuring our view of Zandon right now, but he's just kind of sitting back there in, I believe that's about ninth place. But he is moving up steadily at this point. So again, not moving terrible. He recovered well from hopping at the break, but he did lose a lot of ground there. And I think he wants to be more closer to the point where Smile Happy is in this race, but he is getting closer to that point at this moment. And the thing that's interesting about Zandon in this race is he's actually going to get first run on Smile Happy. As you see, he's moving up and actually goes past Smile Happy at this point. So he's moving really, really well on the turn. Problem is he's widest of all. And the other problem is Epicenter has been having everything his own way. So Zandon just has way too much to make up here. But and also the fact that he's widest of all, or widest of the contenders, isn't really helping him here. And the thing that is perplexing about this race is he gets first run on Smile Happy, but Smile Happy ends up out-finishing him here. And I really don't think that Zandon was ever going to out-finish Smile Happy in this race, and neither of them were going to beat Epicenter here. But a good effort from Zandon, considering that you include the excuses there, but certainly not the most ideal trip for him. And now we're going to move on to the biggest victory of Zandon's career, the Bluegrass. As you can see, the gate issue is solved, at least in this race. He gets away well and is able to establish good position. He's in front of Rattle and Roll, I'm going to mix up the two McPeak horses at one point. He's about the same position as Smile Happy is, though, the favorite for this race. And he's going to get that good position in behind horse. And the thing about Zandon that's been very good throughout his career is he has never been one that has been affected by being in behind horses. He's had to do that a lot in his career. He had to do it in his maiden race. Didn't really have to do it that much in the Remsen, but certainly had to do it in the Risen Star, and then obviously in this race. Very, very compact group of horses. And as you can see here, he's establishing that position further back in the field, but not so much where he's giving them that much. But this race, at least in the early portion, plays out very similar to the way that the Risen Star did in terms of the leader, Emmanuel, who's setting very good beneficial fractions for himself. I had Emmanuel in this race, and at this point, I'm feeling pretty good seeing the numbers put up. Nobody's running with him, and it looks like Emmanuel's going to run really well. And at this point, Zandon is kind of red flags for him at this point. He's had to shuffle back to last at this point. He's closing at Keeneland. Not something that's the easiest thing to do, but the thing that's going to win him this race is Flavien Prat. Flavien Prat makes the move right now, and this is where the Prat factor comes in. Prat doesn't panic and try to take Zandon outside and manufacture holes. Instead, he waits for the holes to come in. Smile Happy struck the lead right now, but he's got a ton of horse right here, and Zandon is going to blow right by Smile Happy. This is the most impressive individual 100-point victory of any of the horses. Better than Mo Donegal, better than Epicenter, better than Taba. Zandon, with all the trouble that he had to overcome, to win this race, Smile Happy got first run on him. To win the Bluegrass the way he did was spectacular. And a great note to end on for his final start going into the Kentucky Derby. Now we'll get into the pros and the cons for Zandon like we have for all the other horses on our Kentucky Derby profiles. Looking at the Beyers, the figures have been pretty good. I haven't touched on the figures yet, but 90 in the Remsen, 93 in the Risen Star, 98 in the Bluegrass, 98 is right up there with some of the best horses in the crop. But the big pros for Zandon is he's battle-tested. Only 4 career starts, but he has done so much in those 4 starts. He has been punched in the mouth many times. I made the joke on Racing Rundown last week. He's been punched in the face, literally, if you go back to what happened to him in the Remsen Stakes. But his maiden race, he was in behind horses. He was kind of fighting the rider, and he was able to overcome it there. The Risen Star, Remsen was already mentioned. The Risen Star, he was very wide there, jumped at the break. That was definitely his worst career effort, but again, he had stuff that he had to overcome there. And then you look at the Bluegrass, having to shuffle back on the turn, closing at Keeneland, running down Smile Happy, who got first run on him and looked very good at about the 16th pole. So absolutely battle-tested Zandon, number one. Number two, Flavien Prat. Flavien Prat is one of the best jockeys in the country. You can make the case that he is the best jockey in the country. He absolutely won Zandon the Bluegrass. And Flavien Prat, when he runs in Triple Crown races, runs very well. He has had some very good finishes in Triple Crown races. And knowing that the Derby is a race that Trip often wins the race, and the Bluegrass, Zandon could find himself in a position in the Derby very similar to what he found himself in the Bluegrass, except he might have to navigate even more horses. And the fact that Prat has already done that with him and showed that he's not going to take Zandon 1,700 wide and try to come widest of all in the Derby and can wait for the holes to come, because most of the time in the Derby, the holes come. You just got to get them. So the fact that Prat has shown that he is going to do that with Zandon, very, very much something to say is a big positive for him. And then the distance experience. Last three starts have all been at a mile and an eighth. You know that the mile and a quarter is not going to be too much more for him. As you saw, the way he was finishing up the Bluegrass, he absolutely is going to get that extra quarter of a mile. The cons for him, though, he's been second best in races before. He was second best in the Remsen. He was second best or even third best in the Risen Star. And, you know, there's not really an explanation for that other than Mo Donegal was better than him on the day. Epicenter was better than him on the day. Yes, he was better than Smile Happy in the Bluegrass, but he's run into situations where he's been the second best horse before for no other reason than he was the second best horse in there. So that's certainly a con. He's been beat before. I know I kind of said that Prat's a pro, but Derby traffic history. He's a horse that tends to find trouble. He overcomes it, but there have been instances where Derby horses have just found so much trouble and have run much worse than they could have through no fault of their own, but just because of the trouble that they ran into. So that's a concern that you have to think about. And then the third is the gate issues. 2 of 4 starts, he's had problems at the gate. And with this single 20-horse starting gate, the break is all the more important. So if Zandon doesn't break in the Kentucky Derby, his race is over. So that's certainly something to look at. Like I said, 2 of 4 starts. Didn't happen in the Bluegrass, but it doesn't mean it can't happen in the Derby. So that's just something to consider. He's a very good horse. He's one of the horses that I'm absolutely considering for the win in the Kentucky Derby. He's run with everybody that he's been asked to run with, and I think he's got a huge shot to win this Kentucky Derby, and we'll see how he gets with the draw and what kind of trip he gets. It's a big trip and draw Derby for him and all the other horses, but especially for him. With that being mentioned, that's it for this Derby profile. We will see you in our subsequent Derby profiles. And like I already mentioned, if you haven't checked them out, go check out the playlist below. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.